Hello, hello. Hi, everyone. How are you? Thank you. So my name is Teresa Okoken, and I am one half of the dynamic duo that is the co-host of Stories from the Stage. We are really excited for this very, very historic evening where we have a full house here in our studio audience. Let them hear you, full house. Yes. Full house here in the studio audience, and we are live streaming right now on Facebook Live and on YouTube. So this is real exciting. There are folks around the world experiencing this evening for you. How do you all feel about that? Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about it. All right, so tonight's theme is on Cloud 9. And when I say cloud, I'm not just talking about a place to store your data, although if you know me, you know I love data. What I'm talking about is that really good stuff in life, feelings of love and joy and connection and commitment, those warm, fuzzy feelings. That's the Cloud 9 that I'm talking about. And tonight, we have 6 storytellers who are going to share their true stories of the moments that they were on Cloud 9 because they fell in love, or because they did something that they were passionate about, or maybe just because. Are you all ready to hear their stories? And I hope you all at home are ready as well, and I am ready to go. So your first storyteller this evening works during the day as a job search workshop instructor. He has been a professional story spinner around New England for the last 10 years with Mass Mouth, The Moth, and the Story Slam on the South Shore program. He has huge love for many people in his life, most specifically his amazing wife and his wonderful children. Please join me in welcoming to the stage storyteller Brendan Schneider.
How are you? WGBH, how are you? There we go. All right. The folks who are married in here, somebody said, oh God. Off to a great start. Folks who are married in here, I want you to remember when you proposed. Or, more to the point, I want you to remember the ideas that people had for how you should propose. Right? Because when you go in to propose, everybody has advice. Somebody said to me, all right, here's what you do. Go to Fenway Park, all right? You pay the guy that runs the Jumbotron. Right? As soon as the camera's on you, you get down on one knee with all the people in the stadium and all the people at home. There's no way she's going to say no. Somebody at my job said to me, what you do is you take her out to a fancy pants restaurant and you put the ring in a glass of champagne. That's going to look beautiful. Well, I didn't want Kelly choking to death on a glass of champagne after I proposed to her in the Jumbotron, and none of that was us. And I wanted something that was quintessentially us. And that's when I thought of the Cyclone, the roller coaster at Coney Island, New York. Have you guys been to Coney Island? Right? Excellent. Go again. Go this weekend. Coney Island is majestic. 1930s, carnival style. Because you got the Ferris wheel, and you got the haunted house, and you got the sound, the surf, the smells, the wacky people. The whole place is like spinning candy. Coney Island's like the first time you played Chutes and Ladders, or the first time you heard really good swing. And Kelly was the perfect match for that. A miracle. Brilliant. We met each other in work, and we kept our relationship secret for 11 months. There was this bogus human resources rule that it isn't that we frown upon interoffice romance, we just want to know about it. Right? Yeah, right. So here we'd be making out in the elevator and we'd break just as the elevator doors would open up. Or we'd see each other in the hall, real innocent, real innocuous. Hi, Kelly. Hi, jerkface. And then keep walking. Right? And even after she left that company and the cat was out of the bag, we kept doing awesome, amazing, offbeat stuff. We found a club that had swing dancing one New Year's Eve night. And we went. And if you've ever been to a swing dance event, these people are amazing. You know, throwing people up in the air and doing twists. And the thing was, Kelly and I couldn't dance. And we show up. So all these people are dancing, this amazing moves, and they're all giving us this really, really wide berth, right? We jumped in the ocean in February for charity. We once dressed to the nines and posed as a power couple and crashed open houses in Brookline. So we'd walk in and I'd say, "Hello, my name is Benton. This is Cynthia. We are both violently rich." We would drive to different states outside of Massachusetts. We'd find an arcade and then find an air hockey table, and we'd both battle it out for like the air hockey championship of that particular state. And I think Kelly still has the lead in the number of wins. I used to tell people in a past life I must have rescued a few dozen blind nuns from a raging church fire to earn it. So we get to Coney Island, and it's drizzling. So I'm a little nervous because I don't want them to close the cyclone. I mean, posing in front of the House of Freaks would send the wrong message. And plus, what was I going to do? I mean, if there's a padlock on the gate, I can't just propose to her in the street, right? But luckily, the gate was open. We walk in, the rain stops, and here we are. Now the cyclone. It is the greatest roller coaster in the history of all kind. Now, it's old. It's built in 1927. It's wooden. And it's more than a little rickety. Because you get to that first drop, and I swear, you go in a little bit. You can actually see the tracks right beneath you. And in that instance, you think to yourself, well, this thing's been around longer than any roller coaster regulation I know about. It's older than cats and dogs. It predates humanity by about 4 seconds. I could die right now. But what a way to go. Now, Kelly and I get in the front car. Got to be the front car. If anybody's keeping notes about proposals on a roller coaster, got to be the front car. And everyone always tells you, go in the back for the whip. For a proposal, you want the front car. It's symbolic, right? But before you go over, you want to be with that person. So you get in the front car. And bar comes down, and the guy comes over. Tickets, please. Tickets, please. And that's when I made the ultimate connection. Because you see, up until that point, I just wanted to do something cool and offbeat. But if you think about it, a roller coaster is marriage, right? And it was this particular roller coaster, the cyclone, because marriage is a cyclone. Ups and downs, confusing, exhilarating, screaming kids, more kids, mania. And wild laughter. Your ticket, please, for the ride of your life. Literally. So we hand over the ticket, and the car goes around a bend, and we start going up. And the whole world falls down around us. I wait till we're about halfway up, when the wind is really whipping, right? And I take out the ring. Hang on. I haven't asked her yet. It'll be all right. And I said, hey, it's been a long time coming. What do you think? Now, some women might cover their mouths. Some might cry. Not Kelly, though. No, Kelly might be the only woman in history to snatch the ring from a boyfriend's hand, shove it onto her own finger, all while yelling, yes, give me that before we drop it. And whoosh, away we went. Now, the really crazy part is that when we get down off the roller coaster, we're on the boardwalk, and Kelly tells me that like a week before, she had a dream that I proposed on a roller coaster, and we dropped the ring. So imagine what was going on in her mind. And the rest of the dream was really funny too. She said that we were down on the ground there with all the rocks and gravel and stuff, and the roller coaster above us. And the people who were helping us were circus people. Circus people. So like there was a strong man with the handlebar mustache and the clowns and tightrope walkers, and they were helping us with the ring. But in reality, we didn't drop the ring. We never have. And we've been married since 2012. Hunter S. Thompson used to say, buy the ticket, take the ride. Some rides are short, but others last your whole life. And they're just as punchy. It all depends on who has the ticket for the seat next to you. Thank you very much.
Brendan Schneider, everybody. I just want to let y'all know that I saw a couple of couples over here in the back just like really looking at each other like they knew what it was like to sneak into some open houses. I think we had some universal themes happening during that story. I don't know about the roller coaster part though. I know who. A lot of ladies are not like Kelly, like he said, and I am a lady who would be like, why are we on a roller coaster right now? That would be my first thought. Are you ready for your next storyteller? Yes, and she is also ready. So your next storyteller is a Latina mother, artist, and daughter of immigrants. She is an educator, and she currently works as the Dean of Diversity and Inclusion at the Cambridge School of Weston. She has been guided throughout her life by one eternal compass, which is social justice. Please join me in welcoming to the stage storyteller Rosanna Salcedo.
I'm sitting on the exam table, adjusting my clothes, making chit-chat with my doctor. I had just gotten married and I was there for my annual checkup. She congratulates me and says, "So, now that you're married, are you thinking about starting a family?" My face lights up. I've wanted to be a mother for as long as I can remember. And it's not surprising. I grew up in a family with very defined gender roles. Being a mother was something that I was taught and expected to do. From the moment I was born, I was socialized with baby dolls and accessories, bottles and diapers and strollers. I was encouraged to hold and take care of siblings and other relatives, and I started babysitting at a young age. There was no doubt in my mind that at some point I would be a mother and that it would be one of the most important roles in my life. Yes, I am thinking about it. Well, everything looks great. There's no reason why you can't start trying right away. That was all the encouragement I needed, and it was all I could think about on the way home. This was going to be the most important adventure of my life. I was going to make a baby. The first step is conception. I go home and I make charts and spreadsheets to record my cycle and know with great accuracy when I'm going to be fertile. And within months, I'm pregnant. And then I use my journal to record every aspect of my pregnancy journey. Every appointment, every milestone, every change, every feeling. I read every book I can get my hands on how to have a healthy pregnancy, and I follow all of a mother's advice, just in case. I take my vitamins, my iron pills, and extra folic acid. In the second trimester, I find out the sex of the baby, and I start to talk to him and play music for him in utero. When I can't run anymore, I transition to power walking and yoga because I want to have the best baby ever. After a healthy pregnancy and delivery, he's born. I loved my baby from the moment I knew he existed and throughout all of those months carrying him. But the moment you finally see and feel your baby, it's indescribable. Time stops and you realize that you've been part of this miracle and that you're going to love this little person forever. Throughout the pregnancy and thereafter, I did research and read articles and books on how to childbear as well. I subscribed to all of the latest, most progressive theories that I was told would ensure the healthiest, most advantageous outcomes for my child. I fed him the most nutritious foods, and I exposed him to as many enriching opportunities as possible. Mommy and me, art classes and music classes. I took him to museums and galleries and libraries. I spoke to him in English and Spanish. Our home was full of books and baby Einstein videos and things he could manipulate and build with. He was privileged in so many ways, not the least of which was how much he was loved. But as soon as I brought him home, I began to notice things. You know, I thought that making a baby was like baking. You follow the instructions, you put a lot of good things in, and you get a lovely cake at the end. It turns out babies are not exactly like cakes. This baby wouldn't sleep when I needed him to sleep, and he wouldn't eat when I needed him to eat, and he didn't like the things that I was serving him. He was reticent and didn't like to try new things. And he had tantrums in public often. Did I make a defective baby? I did all the things that the book said. I was often frustrated and disappointed, and I took it very personally. I enrolled him in preschool because I needed to work, and I wanted him to be socialized. Every day, I packed him the same 3 things for lunch: plain noodles, carrot sticks, and strawberry yogurt. But at least there were 3 different food groups. Drop-off was always an issue. He was teary-eyed and clingy, but I left him without too much worry because at the end of the day, he was always okay. I assumed he was having a normal preschool experience. At the end of the school year, when I went to pick up his things and collect all of his artwork, his teacher took me aside and said, I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want you to worry, but he cried himself to sleep at nap time every single day. I guess I'm glad that she told me, but I was crushed and a little worried. What's wrong with my child? And she said, she's fine, he's normal. So things went on this way, with him being very expressive about what he liked and didn't like and what he would and wouldn't do, and I continued to feel bad about myself sometimes, but I tried the best that I can to be the best parent that I could. Then it was summer, and if you haven't noticed already, I'm an overachieving parent, so I decided that I was going to stencil a dinosaur border all around his room. I thought about this for weeks, and I planned it. I went out to the craft store, and I bought the brushes and the stencil and the paints. I planned to do it on a Saturday so that I could drop him off at my mother's house because I wanted it to be a surprise for him. That Saturday, I spent the entire day measuring the spaces, and I wanted, and creating the dinosaurs on the wall. I created a dinosaur pattern. So he loved dinosaurs. He was 4 years old, and he could name all of them. And so I decided to create the pattern. Tyrannosaurus was red, Triceratops was orange, Stegosaurus was green, Pterodactyl was blue, and I repeated that pattern over and over and over again until I had a perfect dinosaur border all around his room. By the end of the day, I was exhausted, but very proud of myself. So I go to pick him up and bring him home for the big reveal. He walks into the room and examines my work, thoroughly unimpressed. "Don't you like the dinosaurs?" I ask. He shrugs and turns his attention to something else. I'm crushed, but I decide, fine, he's had a long day with grandma, he needs to decompress, I'm gonna turn my attention to something else as well. I go to the kitchen to engage myself in making dinner. While I'm making dinner, I notice that he's being really quiet in his bedroom, and that's not always a good thing. So I check on him, and what I see makes me lose my mind. The paint is still wet, and he has taken the palm of his little hand and rubbed every single green stegosaurus on the wall, creating this big green smudge every few feet all around the room. "What have you done?" I yell. And he looks up at me and says, "I don't like Stegosaurus." I cry and rage with anger and frustration. I was ready to send him to military school. Instead, I send him to Montessori school. I had resigned myself to the fact that I had a willful child, and I was beginning to worry about how he would adjust to a traditional public school system. So I started to investigate other schools, and I knew that Montessori was more progressive and unstructured, and that children would be able to choose their activities and pursue their interests, and I thought, perfect for my child. All right, so this school was a renovated farmhouse situated on the top of the hill of a working farm. And his teacher was an elderly German woman named Anne, and she could get him to do almost anything. At the end of his kindergarten year, the school had a ceremony to celebrate a successful year, and they invited parents and families to attend. It was a beautiful, warm, sunny spring day. Everything took place outside. The teachers brought the children out, and they created a circle on the grassy lawn. And they asked all of the families, the parents and the loved ones, to create an outer circle around the children. And I can feel the love and warmth radiating from these concentric circles. The children led us in some songs. And then the teacher explained that every child has a unique gift that they give to the world. And she proceeded to present each child with a recognition of their gift. There was the gift of humility, the gift of generosity, the gift of humor, the gift of honesty. And I was getting more and more tense, bracing myself for what she was about to say about my child because I had no idea. She finally gets to my child and she says, "Javier, you're so good with all of the other children and you love to take care and feed the animals. Your gift is the gift of kindness." I feel tears streaming down my face and I exhale a huge sigh of relief because I worried so much about this child. I just wanted him to be okay. And I wanted to know that I was doing a good job parenting him. And I was so grateful to this woman who could see him and recognize his gift. After the ceremony, I hug and kiss him. We say our goodbyes and we go home. He's 22 now. And I'd love to tell you that I no longer rage with anger and frustration, but that would be a lie. But it doesn't matter because I know that he walks through the world with loving kindness in his heart. Thank you.
Rosie, thank you so much for that story. Your son sounds like a wonderful and kind young man. How many moms do we have in the audience this evening? Moms at home as well. Congratulations. Round of applause for all of you. Clap, clap. I myself am not a mother and never will be. That's not a thing that I want for my life, but I am an auntie. And I can tell you that while I've never experienced what Rosie was talking about, like seeing your newborn, on the day that they're born, I have experienced seeing my sisters have babies. And that is just like, it is honestly one of the most wonderful things I've ever seen in my life, is to see my sisters who I've known for my whole life, their whole life, like create another human life and then watch them raise that life. And my niece and my 3 nephews are some of my most favorite people on the planet. So one more time, Rosie, thank you for that story. If you all at home watching on Facebook and YouTube are enjoying this, please be sure to be liking the stream, be sharing it with your friends. You can send us some gifts about roller coasters or maybe some mommy memes, Let your friends know that you're watching Stories from the Stage. Everyone else and you at home, are you ready for your next teller? Yes, me too. So your next teller is a writer, a storyteller, and a mother of 3 children. She has performed with The Moth, with Stories from the Stage, and with other programs throughout Massmouth. And in her free time, if she's feeling a little bit stressed out, she searches for makeup tutorial videos because there's something that just really calms her about watching the application of fake eyelashes and contouring. Please join me in welcoming to the stage storyteller Cora Waring.
Hi, guys. Hi. So my dad was newly single, and I was kind of sad about it. He had been dating the same woman since I was 15 years old, so almost 20 years, and I really liked her. I thought that she was the woman that he was going to spend the rest of his life with. But then my dad let me know that things had sort of fizzled, and he wanted one more shot to feel like he was on cloud 9 romantically. Basically, what my father said is that he wanted one more shot at something fiery and passionate. So he had gotten onto the dating website Plenty of Fish. Around the same time, my husband Jason and I took our 3 kids down to Florida to visit my dad. And even though I was kind of bummed about the breakup, I remember looking around when I got down there and I thought, there's plenty of retired fish out here. My dad can totally find someone. That's when my father told me that he had something he wanted to discuss with me. He said that he wanted he and I to agree together on an appropriate age bracket of women that he could date. He had a formula in mind that he wanted to use. He got it from Hugh Hefner. It went half of a man's age plus 7 years. So let me do the math for you. My father was 64. He wanted this age bracket to start at 39. I happen to be 34. So immediately when my father tells me this, my imagination just goes reeling 34 years back in time to when my mother is in labor and my parents are driving to the hospital to have me and become parents for the very first time. And as they're driving down the street, they pass a school bus where a little girl is climbing up the steps to go to kindergarten. This is the woman in the Plenty of Fish universe that my father now wants to date. And I can't wrap my head around that. So I say the only logical thing that pops into my head, which is, ew, no. And this topic proceeds to take over our vacation. My father tells me that he's just not attracted to women his own age, which makes me wonder exactly how old I'll be when my attractiveness just bottoms out or gets dictated by a number and has very little to do with how I look or act or the kind of person that I am. My dad looks at me and he says, well, Cora, if you got hit by a bus, wouldn't you want Jason to find someone and be happy? And I think, well, yeah, Dad, but none of the women in your life are dead. Later on, I flip the formula because I really want my father to see how ridiculous this is. And I say, Dad, if I was out in the Plenty of Fish universe, does this mean that my age bracket of men starts at 54? And my dad just kind of laughs and he says, I'm sorry, babe. That's just the way the world works. But I know that my father secretly loves that this is how the world is supposed to work. And when I think about it, like men can date younger women, but it's not supposed to work in reverse. Or women after a certain age just become completely undateable. When I think about all that, it just sounds like garbage. And here's the thing. It's not that I don't want my father to find happiness. I do. It's just I have never had to think about this before. When I line up all of his old girlfriends, I never had to think if they were old enough because I was always a kid and they were always adults. There was just that natural generational divide. So if my father's gonna date someone new and he's gonna give me a say, I would kind of just prefer to maintain that generational divide and want this woman to be a little closer to my mother's age than to mine. At one point, I asked my dad if I could look at his Plenty of Fish profile. And he handed over his phone, and one of the things that he checked was that he was open to the option of maybe having more children. And before I even knew the words were coming out of my mouth, I said, Dad, does this mean that my children are going to be changing the diapers of their future aunts and uncles? And my father said, my father said, oh God, no, I don't want any more children. Please change that for me. So I did. I think the hardest part of the whole week was watching my father on the Plenty of Fish app. And it was hard not to do it because he was on it all the time. And he'd swipe left and he'd laugh, and then he'd swipe left again and he'd laugh harder. And on behalf of anyone who's ever put themselves out there, I could just feel this anger lighting up inside of me. So I think the last straw came towards the end of the week. We were in the hot tub drinking red wine. It was like 10 o'clock in the morning. And, and my dad said to me, he goes, you know, I would just really like to find a young widow because that shows an ability to commit right up until the very end. And you guys, the hypocrisy in that statement, I just felt something break in me, and my husband Jason was in the hot tub, and I think he knew it was happening because he starts giving me this knife to neck motion, like we've all got to stay in this condo together for another day and a half, like don't do this, but I did it. And I stood up and I said, Dad, no matter what you say, I am never gonna agree with this stupid formula. And then my father fired right back and he said, you know what, you're right, it is stupid, it doesn't even have anything to do with you. So I got up and I stomped out of the hot tub, and all I could think was, he's right. It's never had anything to do with me. I was about 8 when my parents got divorced, and my dad told me by way of explanation that he only had one life to live, and he wasn't going to spend any more of it married to my mother. But even as a kid, I remember feeling like such an idiot because it had never occurred to me that our family dynamic could change until it did. And then my mom had to go back to work, and she got stressed and anxious about everything all the time. And my sisters and I had to go to daycare. And my dad, he was off. He was skiing and boating and playing tennis and dating women who weren't my mother. And he would come to pick us up and take us out to dinner or have us for the weekend. But I could just never shake this feeling in the back of my mind that there was somewhere else that he wanted to be or something more fun that he would rather be doing. So I come home from Florida, and I'm angry, and I don't know what to do with it. So at first I decide to try to talk to a couple of my friends about it, but of course I pick the wrong people who don't agree with me. I pick people who say things like, love is love, and you should just want your dad to be happy no matter who she is. And then I look at them and I say, okay, and how long have your parents been married? And they say something like, 45 years and going strong. They want to be buried in the same casket. And all I can think is like, I can't talk to you about this. So the next most logical thing that I decide to do with my anger is start a Plenty of Fish account for myself so that I can get online and warn all of the women out there about my father. Because I am sure I am not the first adult child to try to stalk her parent on a dating website. So that's what I do. And it takes me about a day to realize that, 1, I can't even find my father on Plenty of Fish, and 2, if I do, the dating app probably isn't going to let me see who he's talking to, even though that would be really awesome. So I decide to just try to set it all down. It's been a few years now, and Plenty of Fish still emails me, even though I'm happily married and no longer stalking my father. But I will get these emails that say, hey, cool chick, 7575, we've got new matches waiting for you. And I never delete those emails because they always make me think. Sometimes I look at my own marriage and I go, God, relationships can be so hard, even when they're good. Sometimes I look at my kids and I'm so glad that they know that their dad and I don't have anywhere better to be. And sometimes I get those emails and I actually make a wish that my father will find somebody and that I'll just make peace with it no matter who she is. A couple weeks ago, I was talking to my dad, telling him that I had this story coming up, and he wanted to let me know a few things. The first thing he said was that I should double check the Hugh Hefner dating formula because perhaps he misstated it. And it's actually half of a man's age plus 9 years, not 7. I was not able to verify this online, but I've been laughing all week at the thought of Hugh Hefner's dating formula being slightly more moderate than my own father's. The second thing my father said is that maybe there will be all these single ladies out there who want to meet him after I tell my story. So I will leave you with this. My father is now a fun-loving 70-year-old. He has a full head of hair. He loves his 3 children and all of his grandchildren. If this sounds like a fit for you, come find me on Plenty of Fish, and I will be your matchmaker. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Hot chick, 7575, Plenty of Fish. I know y'all trying to get that hookup with her dad. And you know what? No time is better than the present. We're about to move into intermission. You can download that app. You can download it at home. Check him out. Check him out. He's looking for you, all right? I'm trying to get in that hot tub in Florida. How about you guys? Yes? Yes. Trying to get in there. All righty. We are moving into our intermission. For those of you at home, the screen's going to go on pause for a little bit, but please don't leave us. We're going to be back with 3 more amazing storytellers. We just need to give some time for our audience here in the room to stretch a little bit, maybe grab a snack. You can do the same at home. And we will see you all very soon. Thank you.
Story is the great leveler across humanity. Everyone has a story.
The overall struggles we all have are the same. And when you have that and when you realize that, it brings people together.
Coming to tell stories and realizing anew every time I tell a story that people really want to listen is really affirming.
And our main responsibility is to listen to those stories.
What's the most you ever paid for dessert? $5, $10, $20? I spent $390 once. Best decision I ever made in my life. You gotta understand, I was 24 years old. Me and my girl were expecting our first kid. We were strapped for cash. So I was working part-time loading trucks in Brooklyn. And after work, I would go play cards and underground poker games for extra money. So clearly I had my life in order. Despite this, my dad decided to bestow some wisdom on me. He said, Gastor, if you want to be a good husband and a good father, it's real simple. You got to do 3 things. Heavy, high, and far. Some's heavy, you pick it up. Some's high, you reach for it. And if some's far, you go get it. I was excited. My wife was pregnant, figured she's going to have cravings. I'm going to get a chance to put this into action. Unfortunately, she only had one craving, Applebee's Maple Butter Blondie. For those of you that haven't had it, it's magical. Scoop of vanilla ice cream on top of a warm blondie, walnut chunks, caramel, and maple butter syrup sprinkled on top. It's fantastic. If you're over the age of 30 and you haven't had one, I have to question your life choices. Problem was, I worked evenings loading the trucks. I would get out 9:30, 10 o'clock most days. All the Applebee's in Brooklyn closed at 10, kitchen closed at 9:30. So if my wife had this craving, I couldn't do anything about it until the weekends. All her friends knew about this too. So when the new Applebee's opened in Fresh Meadows, Queens, and they closed at 11 o'clock, I got 7 text messages from her friends. All telling me, Gastor, next time she wants this, you can make it happen. I was armed with power now. Excited, because the next week I had my chance. I got a text message as soon as I walk out the building for work. I see it on my phone. Gastor, I had a rough day. But you know what can make it better? Walnut chunks and maple butter syrup. I went into action. I got on my phone. I called the Applebee's in Fresh Meadows. Hi, this is Stephanie from Applebee's. Hi, Stephanie. My name is Gastor Almonte, and I mean business. With every story I tell, I want to make sure that more and more people get familiar with people that look like me and that come from neighborhoods like mine.
The quickest way to let someone else walk in your shoes is to tell them a story.
You can't argue against someone's experience.
If we just allow each other to be open and authentic, we can actually make connections. And if I can do a bit of that in storytelling, I think that's great.
You know what a great place to cry for 5 days is? In the middle of nowhere, rural Colorado, with 100 women who are mostly therapists. If you have to get asked for a divorce on the phone, like there is no better location on the planet. Every morning for the duration of the training, I would get up before sunrise and hike up the hill behind where we were staying. I took a picture of myself every day in that golden light, and my eyes were so swollen with crying that I didn't recognize my own face. I'd come back down, and throughout the days, I would sob, and it would give way to a few leaking tears, would give way to a few blessed moments of calm before the cycle would start over again. And the whole time, I was held and loved and supported by these 100 women in the middle of nowhere. I was approached by women of all ages to tell me their stories of divorce, specifically, and loss more generally, to tell me about the time that they had risen from the ashes of their own lives. Not to hurry me along, but to say that they saw me, that they'd been there. There had been a time that they had not recognized their own face either, but in that moment, they recognized mine. My 7th wedding anniversary was 2 days after I moved out of my house, and my husband and I went to a bar and we cried through it together. My birthday was a month later, and 17 amazing women showed up and toasted me with oysters and champagne and told me I was not going to survive, I was going to thrive. I had called my mom from that cupboard under the stairs, and when I told her the news, she pulled over to the side of the highway to tell me I was going to be okay. And I was, but I would not have been the same and would not have made it so far if it hadn't been for those 100 women in Colorado.
I think stories become a lot more powerful when you bring them to an audience and you share something that you've gone through that can relate to someone else.
I don't tell stories just for my own edification, for my own therapy, if you will.
It has just always been the way that I process the world, is through seeing it, observing it, repeating it, spinning it, building it.
I could do something that scared me a little and share something with people that I hope they enjoyed, but was also selfishly a little bit cathartic.
There's a lot of power in that.
But then that's when I see him. The man who sat across from me at new professor orientation. He's got salt and pepper hair. He's wearing a tweed jacket with real elbow patches. And he has these gold rimmed glasses that are ugly, but not in that cool way. And he's walking towards me, and I think he's going to talk to me. And he does. Hi. I'm David, and I couldn't help but overhear you were going to take the bus today. You know, I've got my sedan right here on campus, and I'd be happy to give you a ride home. And I say no, thank you. Because isn't sedan a red flag? And also, my good Indian immigrant girl upbringing has kicked in. Because the truth is, I know I'm not supposed to be really interacting with men until my parents find a suitable boy for me to marry. You see, ladies and gentlemen, I'm supposed to be having a sort of slightly arranged marriage. This means that in California, my parents are handing out my biodata sheet. It has my name, my height, my weight, how dark my skin is, my education level, and a photograph. But in Philadelphia, it's still raining. So I say, actually, I'd love a ride. So I get a ride home. A few weeks after that, I see him with some other faculty members. Then we go out with friends of his from out of town. And then he asks me out. And before I know it, we're dating. And I like it.
Storytelling is capturing that thing that makes this particular moment unique and then writing words that no one has strung together ever.
You need to be able to put it in a context that people can understand and relate to and say, oh, that is someone like me.
And it can create a bigger discussion around building empathy and building solidarity.
I love being able to make eye contact with someone and smile at them, because that's what this is all about.
Every person has a story to tell that's unique, and our main responsibility is to listen to those stories.
Estamos para cuidar el bosque. Pues de aquí se pierde todo.
I always understood the impact that Edith had had on my life, but until that moment, I had never really thought about the impact that I may have had on hers.
It is absolutely stunning.
Everything in life is a battle. If you want something, you gotta fight for it.
I love teaching people when they think they're getting away with ignorance and they're not.
Yo me vine aquí para echarle ganas. Yo vine aquí para crecer, seguir adelante, salir, rehacer mi vida y ser diferente a los demás.
Y pensar que ahí adentro ya es Estados Unidos.
The pressure that I have on me weighs down on me a lot. Just realizing that life's real and it's not a game anymore.
I end up elbow over tea kettle in the snowbank. And I start to laugh, because it's the kind of story I would tell my dad. And then I start to cry because he's not here.
Run with me.
Sandía natural de la tierra, nuestra tierra.
Muy dulce. I knew I was in trouble, so I said, Clarissa, you gotta do something. My story is a story that proves that the American dream is out there and it's for everyone.
That is really what keeps life exciting.
Hi, everyone at home. This is Teresa. I hope you're enjoying your intermission, but I wanted to cut in just for a moment and have a quick chat with all of you. We wanted to post some of the questions or answer some of the questions that we've been posting for you. And the question that I'm going to answer, and you can answer along at home with hashtag Stories from the Stage, is what is the best way for you to show someone how you care? And in my opinion, the best way to tell someone that you care is to learn their love language, for you to learn how they want to be cared for, and for you to speak that language to them. I'm interested to hear your answer, so post it right there. I hope you guys have been grabbing some snacks. We've been grabbing some snacks here in the audience, and we'll see you all very soon. Thank you. Hello, everyone. And hello, everyone at home watching on our live stream on Facebook and on YouTube. Did you all enjoy your intermission? Yes. Did you get some delicious drinks, some tasty snacks? Yeah? Good. Are you ready for the next 3 storytellers? Yes. That's where we get the big applause. I am also ready for our next 3 storytellers. I am very excited about the next storyteller that you have coming up, who has been telling stories around New England for the last 10 years. She works behind the scenes with Mass Mouth, and she is the person who coordinates all of the stories that you see here on Stories from the Stage. Yes, she's that lady. Outside of Stories from the Stage, her biggest passion and one of the loves of her life is a program called Suitcase Stories. And Suitcase Stories promotes the stories of refugees and immigrants. In the meantime, please join me in welcoming storyteller Cheryl Hamilton.
So when I was in my 20s, I had the opportunity to travel a lot for my work. And I always brought my roller bag and my BlackBerry. And with every trip, my mother would say, "That's my daughter, the modern woman." And I liked it. But I would also often remind my mother that there's one way that I am old-fashioned. And perhaps it's because I brought up on Snow White and Cinderella, but I have always wanted to find my prince and get married. And it's not because I want to wear like some puffy dress and eat wedding cake, but it's because my parents always told me that life is meant to be shared, and I would like to share mine with someone. I also want to get married and have a wedding because I don't want to have children. Like the idea of them, it's crazy to me. But I didn't know that when you opt out of motherhood, you also opt out of all these chances to bring your friends and loved ones together. I mean, there's no baby showers or christenings, graduations or grandchildren. And I love bringing people together. It brings me so much joy. And so when I started looking at my life, I thought, well, other than a memorial, which I hope they would come to, I probably could get my families and friends to come to a wedding. I also want to get married because, although my mother will never say it, I know she's disappointed that I don't want to have children. I mean, I'm the only woman in our family that she can nurture and tell her all of her wisdom. But I say to my mom, it's okay, we can plan a wedding together. We'll leave my brothers out of it and Dad, and we'll just have this special bonding moment. So now, all I have to do is that easy thing of finding a husband. But I'm actually not worried. You see, my first boyfriend in 8th grade for our first date, he took me to the symphony. And my parents, they met on a blind date, and within 3 months, they were engaged and had their first baby within a year. And my older brother, he actually did meet his wife in middle school, and they just celebrated their 25th anniversary by the age of 40. I know. And I'm not even done. My younger brother, well, he dated this wonderful woman for many years. He got engaged on Christmas at a barn in the field. And then he called that wedding off because he met a different woman a few months later at a labor organizing protest. And they got engaged within a year, and they have 2 children. Should be easy. In 20 years, I have dated over 100 men. I know this because I counted. I stopped counting at 100. Now, let's be honest. The first 25, those were people I didn't actually plan on marrying. I was still finding myself and pursuing my career and traveling around. And then the next 25, well, I guess you could describe it as anthropology. I just wanted to explore their worlds. But then I start to get nervous. I'm getting older. I've passed 30. And I'm meeting nice guys, but they aren't quite right. And I'm meeting the wrong guys, and I'm smart enough not to marry them. I dated 7 Matts. That's a thing you do when you've dated 100 men. My mom, she especially liked Tom because I think, he's an Irish Catholic like me. He has dimples. He likes baseball, which she likes to score. Tom became a priest. And with each breakup, I am sitting in a pizza parlor with her, and we are both very confused. I am confused because why does this have to be so hard? And my mom is confused because her other children's collective dating was like 2 people. I am halfway to 200. And I could go on about the pain and the heartbreak and the hope, right? But the real thing is that I just keep thinking, that wedding and that marriage, it is just moving further and further away. Now I'm 38 and I'm standing outside of the Boston Public Market on a date that I don't even want to go on. It's raining and cold and I've already canceled with him once. But my best friend says I have to go. She says, just go. And now I'm standing outside in the rain and I see this man walking towards me and he's wearing this big puffy sweatshirt and I think, really? I mean, this is the best he can do? And when we walk inside the market, he takes it off because, well, it was raining and he just wanted to stay warm. And then I notice he is dressed nice. And actually, he is nice. He's handsome and he's smart and he listens to me. And I start to get really nervous. And I don't usually get nervous. I get so nervous that I am talking like right at him and I am not stopping. His version of this story is that he actually thought I was kind of interesting, but he couldn't get a word in edgewise. But he stuck with me, and I wish Facebook Live could just see what happened. So now I'm turning 40, and I asked that question you are never supposed to ask in a relationship. Chris, where do you see this relationship going? And kind of nonchalantly, he says to me, well, I can see us together forever. And it is like Snow White and those doves, and like they're flying around my head, and my heart is exploding. And I try to calm myself, and I'm like, yeah, me too. But then he looks at me and says, but there's one thing. I never want to marry you. Okay, nowhere in that 40 years of fantasy did I imagine I would meet my prince and he would say, I definitely don't want to marry you. And then he explains he had already been married. And what he had learned is that a marriage is not about a piece of paper, it's about love and commitment. And I hear him, but the thing is, when you have been dating a few people for 20 years, standing in front of your friends and family and saying, I commit myself to you, signing a piece of paper that says I'm part of my own family, I needed that. But he says no, and we have fights and disagreements, and now I am sitting in a pizza parlor again with my mom, and I am crying. I'm crying because I tell her I love him, but I want to get married, and I don't know if I can do this. And my mom is disappointed too. She's got over Tom, and now she likes Chris. And when she tells people why she likes him, she can only use one word. Chris is kind. So now, being a good mother, she's trying to help me with a solution, and she says, well, maybe you could have a party, right? A party, that sounds like fun. And I think, yeah, Mom and I could plan a party. So I asked Chris, and he's not excited. He's an introvert and doesn't need this. But I say to him, listen, you had your marriage. Actually, you had a wedding. I'd like something. So now we agree to have a party, and we're calling it our celebration of love. It's stupid. But that's what we're calling it at home. And now I'm sitting on the couch and we're looking at websites for a venue when Chris turns to me and he says, Cheryl, will you marry me? I know. And then I say the most unromantic response to any proposal in history. Chris, don't screw with me. except I don't say screw. And then he says, I'm not. And then I start crying, and he's holding my hand, and I am so happy. We agree to go to Maine to tell my parents because we want that reaction from them. But I lie, because in an hour I'm in my car calling my mom, and I am screaming. And she's laughing, and I'm smiling, and she says, I am so happy for you. And I said, I'm happy too. And now I am planning a wedding like the world is ending. Within a month, I have a wedding coordinator. I have booked every hotel room on an island off of Maine. I am going to have a lobster bake. We are going to have a lobster bake. And we found out that you have to bring in porta potties from the mainland, and it's super expensive, but we figure it's worth it. But my favorite thing is when I text my mom, pictures of the dresses and the menu and the flowers, and she writes me back with just hearts, continuous hearts on my screen, and then she just keeps saying, I am so happy for you both. 2 months later, on the way to my cousin's wedding, my mother trips down a stairwell and doesn't survive. Nobody prepares you for the indescribable grief of losing your mother. Maybe like that Prince fantasy, I never imagined a situation that my mother was not handing me something blue in my bedroom, or sitting at the ceremony at the end of the day hugging me and saying, that was the most beautiful wedding ever. She's telling me that Chris was worth the wait, and I agree. And now I am telling everyone that I don't need a marriage, I don't need a wedding, screw all of it, I don't care. But the thing is, my family, they are now gung-ho about this wedding. My nieces are picking out their bridesmaid dress, and Brian says he has this unbelievable toast, and it's a lot. Even Chris is like, it's okay, honey, we're gonna have a wedding, it is going to be beautiful. And I get it. My family needs this wedding. They need some sort of joy amongst all of this pain. But the truth is, I don't know if I need this wedding anymore. Because that last night in her hospital room, as I sat at the end of the bed and Chris rubbed my back, there was this moment that I looked behind me and Chris was crying just as hard as everyone in that room. And in that moment, I realized that Chris is already my husband. We are already married. And although it is not how I ever dreamed, my mom is there. Thank you.
Cheryl Hamilton. So I want to tell y'all, I am 36 years old. I've done a lot of anthropology, as Cheryl would put it. A lot of anthropology since the Yahoo personal days, way back with that anthropology. I've been on a lot of first dates, but I have never had a wedding. But you know who has? Cheryl Hamilton has. Just at the end of last year, Cheryl and Chris got married at the Boston Public Market in a gorgeous ceremony. Yes, round of applause for that. And he is a dream show husband. He is every bit as wonderful as Cheryl described him. So one last round of applause for Cheryl and for Chris. Alrighty, let's move into our next storyteller. So our next storyteller has been an avid reader since she was 4 years old when she first finished her very first book by Dr. Seuss. Since then, she's become a storyteller. She tells stories with Mass Mouth, The Moth, Tell All Boston, and right here on Stories from the Stage as well. She also is a self-proclaimed nerd because she has a degree from MIT. Yeah, please join me in welcoming to the stage storyteller Angie Chapman.
I'm 12 years old, in the 7th grade, and I am in love with Eric with a C, not a K. And so in all of my notebooks in history class and biology class, I write my name and Eric's. Angie and Eric, Eric and Angie, Mrs. Eric. Hearts all over them and butterflies. Of course, he has no idea I exist because he's in the 8th grade, and 8th graders don't necessarily talk to 7th graders. Plus, he's captain of the football team and plays quarterback, and he's on the basketball team in the spring and plays point guard. I don't know what those are. All I know is that I want him to notice me. So I call my friend Kathy, whose big sister Doris actually has a boyfriend, and I ask her to help change me so that he will notice me. So Doris, I go over their house, and Doris looks me up and down. She's like, first you gotta ditch the glasses. And I'm like, no, I love these glasses. They're pink and cat eye, and I picked them out myself. And plus, I can see so sharp and clear with these glasses on, and I can stay up all night reading a really good book in the dark, and my head doesn't hurt the next morning. So she's like, okay, well, then you have to put this Kleenex in your training bra. And it itched, so I took that out. So she's like, what am I gonna do with you? So she says, the third thing is you have to show some interest in his activities. So I actually go to a football game, even though I have no idea what a halfback or a fullback or a running back is. And I watch him in the cold and the rain, and it's like, no, this ain't happening. Instead, we ride to school together every day in a carpool from the south side of Chicago to the north side with a bunch of other families. And instead, I do things like drop my pencil and see if he'll pick it up. I'll say good morning, and he'll say good morning back. And of course, I'll spend all day thinking, what does that mean? Maybe he noticed me. Maybe he'll love me too. But alas, no. In the spring, I go to a basketball game, and that's just as bad. The gym is hotter than all get out, and everybody smells, and I really just want to be home with my book. So fortunately, summer comes, and in the fall, I'm like, I make some effort over the summer. I read lots of books about how to get a boy to like you. But I get back to school, and he's not even there. His parents sent him to boarding school in Massachusetts. So I go to my grandmother's house one day, and she's slicing a big piece of chocolate cake for me before dinner. So I know there's a catch. And the catch is she asked me, Angie, what's wrong? And so I explained to her that this was this boy that I was in love with, and now he's not there anymore. And she stops herself from laughing. I thank her to this day that she didn't actually laugh. But she sighed, and she said, you know, I want you to pay really close attention to this. You have to remember that men are like streetcars. There's always another one coming. And I say, is that how it was with you and Grandpa? Now, my grandfather died before I was born, so I had no idea what it was like. But I could see in my grandmother's face, her face shifting so that I recognized just for a moment the young girl that was in all the photos on top of the piano. And she said, no, that wasn't like how it was with Grandpa. And when you find somebody like that, you get on that streetcar and you ride it till the very end. So time passes, and she was right. Men are like streetcars. I met some other ones. I had a boyfriend in high school and a boyfriend in college. I probably broke some hearts because I know I got my heart broken. And then 25 years later, I'm at this convention in Washington, D.C. I'm the doll. Now, the doll is somebody who's dressed all up to attract people to come to the booth. And so this time I didn't need Kleenex. I just put on a push-up bra. And they actually made contact lenses finally for my prescription, so I took off my glasses. And I had on a really tight skirt so that I could hardly jump up onto the stool when it came down to talk to people. And I saw Eric in the distance at this convention. And I waved. And he pointed to himself like, are you waving at me? And I'm like, yeah, hey, how are you? So he comes on over, and after our conversation where I ask him about his sisters and his parents, I finally realized he doesn't recognize me. So I finally mentioned the school we went to in middle school, and he's like, oh, yeah, how you doing? That's great, yeah. So, and we exchanged business cards. So I get home to Chicago, and there's a voicemail message on my machine. It's Eric. And he's like, I really enjoyed talking with you. We should get together and talk some more about old times. And I'm like thinking, the old times when you didn't even know who I was? But what the heck, So I'm saying, yeah, that would be great. So he's like, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to go to an art show. Hello, you met me at an art show. So he's like, okay, great, I'll pick you up. So we go to this art show, and I do not dress like a doll. I'm in my jeans and my sweatshirt, my glasses are back on, and I have no makeup on whatsoever. Because this time, if you're going to notice me, you're going to notice me, not that doll. So we go to the art show, and I look around, and I see this wonderful piece I wanted to buy, but when it was a little bit of money, and I've promised myself that if I make a major purchase, I think about it for 24 hours. So I leave it there. And meanwhile, we have a nice time. We have pizza. We have a good time. And I get home, and my mother calls me up, and she's like, how was your date? And I'm like, oh, it wasn't a date. I was just hanging out. We were, we're friends. We had a really good conversation. And she says, uh-huh. So the next day, I make up my mind that I want that piece of art. So I go back to the show, and it's not there. So instead, I get another piece by the artist that's similar but not exactly the same. And when I get home, there's another message on my machine from Eric. Hey, I had a really nice time last night, and I was wondering if you want to go out again, because I know your birthday's coming up. I had mentioned that. And I have something for you. So I'm like, well, of course. I'll go out with you again. A present, yes. So we go and we hang out again in Lincoln Park, back in the old days where the school was. And I said, where's the present? He's like, oh, it's in my trunk. I said, oh, okay. So he drops me off at home, gives me a little peck in the cheek, and hands me the piece of art. So I immediately thank him and get a peck on the cheek and go and call my mother. And I said, Mom, you wouldn't believe what happened. And she said, I thought you all were just friends. 6 months later, we were engaged. And a year after that, we got married. And we've been riding on that same streetcar for the past 21 years. And we're going to the end of the line. Thank you.
You guys, let me tell you how easy it was for me to confirm that I could do this show this evening on Valentine's night. It was real easy, okay? I got an email, and I was like, yes, I'm free, obviously, okay? But I am, feeling the love tonight, and I'm really cynical, but, the stone where my heart should be really feels something. Do you guys feel something? I feel it, yes. And a special someone, Eric, is in the audience here this evening. Eric, please wave for us here. Yeah, Eric. Smooth move buying that piece of artwork. Yeah, you got a catch there with Angie. You got a catch. All right, y'all, are you ready for your last storyteller of the evening? I know I'm sad too. I know, but it's the end. I'm sorry. All right, so your last storyteller this evening lives in Portland, Maine with his wife, Susan, and their 2 daughters. He has performed here with Stories from the Stage, and he's also performed with Sound Bites in Maine. And as a Korean immigrant, he is the first Asian American to be elected to the Portland City Council. Please join me in welcoming to the stage storyteller Tae Chung.
My parents were strict and traditional. They wanted my brothers and me to marry a Korean girl. We lived in Maine. I know. I still live there. I was a young teenager in the 1980s, and there were maybe 4 people I could date in the greater Portland area that my parents approved. One was 30. Another 26, 23, and 8. Disappointing my parents, however, was a greater fear than trying to find our happiness or our potential loves. I never heard my parents say, "I love you," to each other. I never saw them kiss. I never saw them hold hands or hug. Being romantic was something my brothers and I were never taught. I suspect my parents were arranged. It wasn't unusual in the 1940s in Korea, before electricity, before plumbing, before free will. I imagine my mother meeting a middle-aged woman, a matchmaker at her home, and she would nervously sit across the wooden table from her. And the matchmaker would have a pile of pieces of paper with names of potential suitors in their hometown. She would pick up each piece of paper and read the names and read their energy and Chinese horoscopes. And she would make 2 piles. She would put the ones that weren't a match on the left-hand side and the ones that were potential matches on the right-hand side. It was analog Tinder. By the time I reached high school, my brothers went off to college, and there were more girls where they were. There were more Korean girls in places like Boston and New York than in Maine. Love has a way of finding and calling you when you're ready. My oldest brother fell in love with an Italian woman, a beautiful Italian woman from Boston. They were perfect for each other, except tradition. When my oldest brother went off to college, he looked like he landed on Ellis Island, but in polyester. And when he met his Italian girlfriend and he came home, he dressed like John Lennon. I had never seen him happier. Times were hard for my parents. My father worked 7 days a week. He was the first one into work and the last one to leave. And on Sundays, he would pick up odd jobs to pay the bills. My mother's textiles job was in danger, as were all the textile jobs in Maine. My father had to borrow money from his friends to pay my older brother's tuition. His life was in chaos, and he turned to tradition. And he forbade my oldest brother from seeing his Italian girlfriend. My oldest brother was enraged. He broke ties with his father. He moved out, he dropped out of college and moved to a small town on the outskirts of Boston, and we didn't see him for years. The message to me was clear. If I disobeyed my parents, I would be disowned. Loneliness was my tradition. Not being able to love was unbearable. I had to break away. I had to break out. I had to break tradition. And breaking tradition meant I would break my mother and father's hearts. And it also meant that I would break my own heart, and that I would have to mend it on my own, alone. I broke my parents' hearts over and over. I dropped out of a prestigious college in Maine. I moved out, and I didn't speak or visit my parents for almost 6 years, even though we lived in the same small town. My oldest brother came back to Portland about 10 years later, and he reached out to me, and he said he wanted me to come back home, but I wasn't ready. I missed my 60-year-old mother getting her driver's license. She was always dependent on my father, and he was patriarchal, something I disliked, and she was finally getting some independence. My family was evolving, but I wasn't ready to come home. When I was 30, a beautiful, curly, blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman with an electric smile walked into the neighborhood center where I was working. She was wearing a brown sweater, brown pants, and brown shoes. For some unknown reason, I said, "You look like a brownie troop leader. Do I need to buy some cookies?" She laughed. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard, and I wanted to make her laugh forever. It was supposed to be a quick visit, but we talked for 5 hours. We listened to Sade's Lover's Rock over and over. We quickly fell in love. She was from a traditional Catholic family. She went to a Catholic university, and after college, she went to Jesuit Volunteer Corps for a year. But she was also a vegetarian and liberal. And her favorite college professor performed same-sex marriages in the 1990s. Family and tradition was still important to her, and she wanted to meet my parents. And I told her my parents would be unwelcoming because they wanted me to marry a Korean woman. She insisted. "Okay," I said. "It's not going to be easy." I took a deep breath and I called my parents' house. I hadn't spoken to them in a year. "Amma, I would like you and Abuji to meet Susan." "Oh." "I'll make oxtail soup, the best." "Amma, Susan can't eat meat. She can't eat anything with meat. Fish is okay." "Oh." "I'll make the best dinner. Friday at 6? When I hung up the phone, I realized I never would have called my parents if it wasn't for Susan. I listened and trusted her. We were both nervous when we went to my parents' house, and for strength, we held hands and walked up my parents' stairs. My mother was hovering over a pot when we walked in. She had been cooking for 2 days. The kitchen smelled of oxtail soup. And I wanted to run away. "Hello," I said. And I introduced my mother and father and older brother to Susan. I asked my mother what she was making, and she proudly said, "Oxtail soup." And I informed her that Susan couldn't eat meat. "I know. No meat, just soup." I looked at Susan, and she gave me a look that it was okay. She trusted me. My parents could see that Susan and I loved each other, and we trusted each other. That night, I broke my tradition of coming home, and Susan broke her tradition of eating meat. And my parents broke their tradition of having a curly blonde, blue-eyed, beautiful woman with an electric smile over for dinner. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much for that wonderful story. And I just want to tell y'all that there's no greater love in my heart than for a mother who's just like, it's oxtail soup and that's what we're eating, you know? Like that's what's happening. I once took my mother to a restaurant called Veggie Galaxy. And 5 minutes into looking at the menu, she whispered to me, Teresa, there's no meat. How are we gonna have a meal? I love a parent who just doesn't understand a meal without meat. Anyways, one more round of applause for Tay, please. Y'all, this is it. We've come to the end of the evening. You have heard all 6 of our wonderful storytellers. I was basically in a puddle on the side of the stage over there. These stories were wonderful and like heartbreaking and heartwarming and all the feelings so warm, fuzzy. Have you all enjoyed yourselves? Yes. And I hope that you all at home have enjoyed yourselves as well. Please continue to use the hashtag Stories from the Stage. You can like us on Facebook so that you get notifications about stories that are coming up, and subscribe to us on YouTube and visit the worldchannel.org website as well. Thank you all so much for being here and have a wonderful night. Good night.